No one survived the ice moons, until a human brought fire and hope. The records of Rael's moons were grim reading across the galaxy. Those frozen orbs drifted at the edge of the star system, shimmering with pale blue light like beautiful, deadly pearls. Many had tried to colonize them, the Vreth, the Olin Syndicate, even the hive-minded Zelshans, but each attempt ended in silence. Ice storms raged for months, temperatures plunged beyond what any known alloy could endure, and a fine crystalline dust choked engines and lungs alike. Even the bravest expeditions returned only as frozen husks, if they returned at all. The moons came to symbolize death itself, and soon they were abandoned to the void. Then a single human ship appeared in orbit above Rael, 9, the most treacherous of the moons. The crew of the mining station orbiting Rael watched in disbelief as the small, battered vessel plunged into the frozen storms below. They expected to see it disintegrate or vanish into the swirling maelstrom of ice and lightning. Instead, the human pilot, known only as Jace Monroe, descended with calm determination. Alone. They said he was mad, a fool chasing glory or an impossible salvage prize. But Jace wasn't after minerals or old wreckage. He was chasing a faint distress signal, something even the station scanners dismissed as phantom echoes. When Jace landed, the storm greeted him with knives of ice. His suit screamed warnings, heaters barely keeping his blood from freezing. Each step was like moving through broken glass, his breath crystallizing instantly. He advanced anyway, guided by a beacon no one else believed in. Buried beneath a collapsed ice ridge, Jace found them, a handful of Zelshans, their hive minds weakened, barely clinging to consciousness, and a few Olin miners frozen together in a half-collapsed shelter. Jace tore open the entrance with his bare hands, joints splitting, blood freezing along the seams of his gloves. He could barely hear their moans through the howling winds, but he answered with a single word. Hold. He dragged them one by one to his lander, body trembling violently. The heaters inside the small craft could not handle so many, so Jace ignited makeshift thermal rods, pieces of scrap metal soaked in plasma fuel, creating roaring flames that licked dangerously close to the hull. He held the survivors in a tight circle around the fire, shielding them with his body, even as the heat scorched his skin through the suit. When the Zelshans tried to collapse from exhaustion, Jace slapped their frozen faces, shouting at them to stay awake. "You'll live," he growled, his voice cracked and raw. "You hear me? You'll live." Hours passed like years. The station above tracked his life signs and watched them flicker toward zero. The rescue shuttles refused to descend, terrified of the storms. Only Jace remained. In that hellish, flickering glow, something miraculous happened. The hive-mind Zelshans linked their consciousness to Jace's mind, sensing his unyielding flame. In that mental union, they saw a species that burned inside, a species that chose to fight with nothing but ragged breath and a single spark. The Olin miners, known for their greed and cutthroat bargaining, wept openly as Jace placed burning rods beside them, pressed them into each other's arms, and forced warmth into their chests. Finally, a single signal broke through the blizzard. "We're alive," Jace whispered into his cracked comm. The station above erupted into frantic action, dispatching rescue shuttles the moment the storm momentarily eased. By the time they arrived, Jace had collapsed beside the flickering embers of his improvised fire, skin blistered and suit melted in places. The survivors, though half-frozen and delirious, all clung to each other, whispering fragments of Jace's words. The rescuers pulled them up into the shuttle, the Zelshans still broadcasting images of Jace shielding them, flames reflecting in his feverish eyes. When they finally laid Jace on the medbed, his pulse was a thin echo. They thought they'd lost him. Then he gasped, as if swallowing the very first breath of spring after an endless winter. His eyes opened, unfocused but burning with that same impossible resolve. "Are they safe?" he rasped. The medic nodded, tears falling freely. "They're safe. Because of you." Jace tried to laugh, but it came out as a broken cough. Still, he gripped the medic's sleeve with surprising strength. "Then good," he whispered, before slipping into unconsciousness. Days later, when he awoke in the station's med bay, he found the Zelshans gathered around his bed, their silvery exosuits gleaming. The Olin miners stood behind them, shoulders squared in silent respect. They had fashioned a small fire in a containment vessel beside him, not for warmth, but as a symbol. The Zelshans stepped forward, antennae trembling. "We felt your flame," their spokesperson said, voice trembling with shared memory. "It is beyond calculation. We owe you our lives." The Olin leader stepped forward next, lowering his head. "We always thought profit was the only true light, but you showed us a different fire. Jace looked at them, his lips twitching into a weak, tired smile. Sometimes that's all it takes, he murmured. In the years that followed, no one called the ice moons uninhabitable anymore. The Zeltians built thermal colonies, guided by Jace's methods of fire management and heat flow. The Olin established trade outposts, this time pledging safe corridors and emergency shelters in his name. They erected statues of Jace across every moon, a human holding a torch high against a blizzard, face half burned, but standing unbowed. Travelers spoke of that single human who carried warmth where no warmth should exist, who proved that a fragile spark could beat back the endless cold. The moons transformed from death traps into beacons of hope, and whenever someone asked how it all began, the locals would answer the same way, voices full of reverence and awe. No one survived the ice moons, until a human brought fire and hope.